But for whatever reason, I was like, let's bring the hardest rangefinder to try and pull focus in a dark punk bar. Welcome back, friends and hoodlums, to the Steps and Stones YouTube channel. If you're new here, my name's William, and I might be here to disappoint you. But before we get going on business, I just have to thank each and every one of you on the last video. The support was absolutely insane. You guys are the real ones. Even if you just found it somehow, watched it, and didn't subscribe, I'm still really thankful for you. Although you can't hear me right now. Doesn't matter. And if you can hear some pitter-patter in the background, there's nothing I can do about that. California's about to flood. So we're going to take this week and do an inside episode. I thought we'd switch things up and take the week to be a little more reflective over the last year in my film photography journey and everything else I've done here on the channel. I'm sure this would maybe have made more sense to do in late December, early January for some people, but life doesn't work like that. We don't pick up our passions and put them down in quarterly chunks. We're inspired whenever the bug hits us. And it just so happens that basically last year this week, I was slamming through my first roll of film in a very long time. So let's call this my unofficial film birthday, because before this year, it had been so long since I worked in this medium and used it as my main form of media capture. I first started to shoot not only film, but digital in high school, and very shortly after, started my career in the film and video world of entertainment and commercials. This is where the dream died. Not only was I becoming more and more obsessed with the pursuit of this is the best lens you'll ever need until next year, or the never-ending chase for the lowest f-stop paired with the highest possible ISO. The world of digital photography and video didn't just become stale, it became like a magnet turned backwards and constantly repelled me from ever wanting to do anything, refusing to align with my once passionate need to capture, and especially outside of jobs. And don't get me wrong, I learned a lot of valuable techniques and workflow during this digital time, but something about it at some point or another became about fixing images that already existed instead of capturing things that are great from the start. So for whatever reason, probably a YouTube influence, at the end of January 2023, I decided to attempt just that. It really started after a night in Joshua Tree, and I've already got a video on the channel if you want to check that out that goes into way better detail than I'm willing to go through again.
Hey, what's up, YouTube?
But for whatever reason that night, it ignited something in me that I hadn't felt in a long time, and I hadn't taken it seriously for years. So basically the next day I dusted off my old Fuji XE1, and that became like my everyday carry for at least a month. And I know what you're saying, William, that's not a film camera. I know, but we all like to dance with the devil from time to time. But the actions of that camera felt a little more tactile and less digital somehow, and the film simulations definitely helped. And it sort of routed out the calluses of my long forgotten muscle memory. It got me in the mood to not only use old cameras again, but try and revive one that had always been broken. And that would be this Canonet QL 17. A camera that at the time I had written off as broken. I'm sure a few of you have already seen this camera on the channel more than a handful of times from a few different videos. But back when I started out, I'd attributed this thing up to just wall decor. Some shelf, I would just put this on for the rest of my life, you know, and be like, ooh, that's nice. But you know what's nicer? Using it. I was lucky enough to have a shop nearby, Bill's Cameras, that brought this thing back to life. Honestly, the shutter was busted and the aperture wouldn't even fully engage. It was slow motion. I'm talking M. Night Shyamalan Earthbender slow. Just like nothing going on. And I think he fixed this in like 4 days, which was insane to me. Years it had been sitting around, collecting dust, and like that, it was back to life. I had always used SLRs in the past between the Canon AE1, which was my first camera, and the Nikon F2, which is my main squeeze, but I was excited to try out a rangefinder for the first time. The patch is different for sure, but you get the hang of it pretty quickly, especially with this one because the patch is so clean. This switch of vision had basically taken me back to those classes in high school and humbled me into the rank of a beginner again. There's something still to learn, and that got me excited to go out. And unlike the never-ending chase of digital cameras, film cameras for the most part are done. There's a few brands and a handful of exceptions, but my point is there is no next best thing that gives you that sense of FOMO that the digital world thrives on and continues to create a money drone because of it. Unless you want to buy me an M6, then I will take everything back. I'll delete this video. So to celebrate not only my photography rebirth, I want to go through some of my first test roll when I was making sure this camera actually was working. Have I learned anything since then? Am I better? Am I worse? Honestly, I almost don't want to know the answer, but I've already committed to the bit. The first roll that we spun through the Canonet was Kodak Gold. If you had asked me most of last year what my favorite budget film stock was, I would have screamed all day Color Plus. But the last 2 months, gold has been kind of growing on me. I also wanted to pick a few shots that I feel are important to me, maybe not my best, but the ones that feel most special, to showcase my small victories alongside these ordinary photos. I tried my best to narrow it down to 5, and maybe in doing that I've hurt my own feelings because I've left off some of my favorite work, but these shots are the most satisfying to me, and I'll hold them close to my heart, closer than a Costco hot dog. And that shit's never going away. If my eye line is a little weird, it's only because I'm looking elsewhere, you know? This one's not bad. I mean, it's pretty straight on. I mean, it's just outside my window. You know, it's a rooftop. What more can we say about it than that? But I do like the non-symmetrical lines that are happening and the extra slit of light that helps create another dynamic line going down the bottom of the image. I don't know. It's nothing crazy, but it was my first time with this lens. And, you know, for a pretty straight on shot, this is pretty crisp. And, you know, my exposure looks correct. All right, hotel. We got some old cars. You know, if you've got a film camera, you have to take a picture of an old car. It's the rule, and if you don't do it, I think you go to jail. So, hotel, Motel 6. I don't know. I think I was just really into the lighting when I took this picture. I can tell that I wanted to back up more, but I was up against a wall, so I couldn't actually go any further unless I wanted to climb and be on top of that wall, and then the perspective would have been so much more different than I wanted. I think it would have been better if I'd maybe waited like half an hour for the sun to kind of start gliding across the door frames a little bit, maybe. You know, just to give like a little bit of separation between. The cars are having a really nice separation right now, and the building just kind of falls flat because of the lighting. You know, not the worst shot. This is awful. I don't know. I hate this. It looks a little overexposed. It's not. I see what I was trying to do here, but I think, in all honesty, this was my first time playing with a 40mm lens. I'm either at a 50 or a 28. This is a weird millimeter to compose for some reason, and I think it either shows too much or not enough. There's no real subject in this image, but it is a picture. This one's a little better, but I kind of wish we got a little... I wish it wasn't so directly in the center. Because of that, it just feels like this is supposed to be on some like corporate website, you know, to be like, we have outdoor seating at our offices. Meanwhile, this building is like abandoned and no one's going to work there. And I was like, that's cool. Let's take a picture of that. Now see, this one I actually enjoy a lot. This might actually be my favorite shot on this whole roll, because at this time I definitely was more used to a shallower depth of field, but I feel like I took a middle ground here. So you get a lot of airy, dreamy bokeh of the plant when it's most closest to the lens, but I still got a lot of it in focus, as well as most of the entire background. I like that I kind of didn't fully line it up so things were like completely neat. There's just a lot of separation here that I like. There's like 3 different layers and they all feel in focus in a way. This is probably the right time. I should have taken the picture of the hotel and the cars, but you know, I'm glad I got this one instead, actually. I don't know what this is. We're just like, this is Frodo walking off into the distance of a bunch of, it's the wetlands, you know? It looks great in the day, but I think this actually showcases the faults of this lens. They call this camera the poor man's Leica, and I gotta be honest, when you are really pushing the depth and going really far with your perspective, this lens kind of falls off for me. I think it's a much better closer, medium close subject kind of camera. This one's a little more interesting. I think it's a little overexposed, but you know, I'm still getting used to my flow of film and how to expose that correctly, you know, because working in digital for so long, you really got to make sure the exposure doesn't give you too little information. So I really made sure that those shadows were shown here. And I think because of that, I did a disservice to this really cool broken down tree. I can't even remember how big this was, if this was like bigger than me or if this was like the size of my arm. That's what's kind of fun about looking back at something from a year ago. You're transported there, but you don't like remember every detail. So it's cool, but I think because the background is so blown out, it falls a little flatter than I would have liked. All right, we are looking at a corner of wood, of rotting wood, and some bokeh in the background. So at least I was smart enough to not like put everything in focus, because then this thing would have been like just so many layers put together that would have felt squished and compressed. But I don't know what inspired me to take this image. I mean, I guess it's cool that it's a little off kilter and some lines going on, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know about that one. Okay, this was on a walk, a different day. The sun is falling nicely on these houses. And what's interesting about gold here is I don't think it actually picked up the pop of these colors very well. The green looks nice and the warmness is there, but these houses were so vibrant that that's what made me want to take the picture in the first place. And I don't think the film did a good job of capturing that. Maybe some Ultramax, because I would have been able to have a little more latitude. That's a punchier film stock, but I don't think I really knew that then. I like this image. I think if it didn't have that sliver of light that cuts right through the middle of the street, this image would fall completely flat for me. Like, yes, it's totally interesting that in this wind, the palm trees are being like swept to the side. It's not that typical like Los Angeles straight palm trees kind of look. There's some life and movement to this image, but I think without that sliver of light, this image just is just one note. It's all in the dark, it's all silhouetted, but I don't know, I like it. I think this one's a very lucky, I don't think I knew what I was doing totally, but it works. Just a little beach home covered in too many plants. I think the lighting's okay. My framing could use a little bit of work, either a little less headroom or a little more. Like, either cut out that wall entirely or point down and get some of the street. Okay, I don't really know why I took this, but I'm kind of happy I have it. In all honesty, I feel like this is something I could have just taken on my phone, but it looks kind of good on gold, if I'm being honest. Like, this isn't photography, I guess you would say, but this is a nice memory I shared with my mom last year. We just did a bunch of plants in her garden. We didn't get a shot of it, but we also did a bunch of vegetables and stuff to take and plant in her little planter that she's got back there. I don't know, this was a nice day, so I'm kind of happy that I have this image. Just a picture of my sister. I wanted to see, I know this shot specifically, I was trying out the auto aperture setting because the Canonet does have that, and I wanted to see like what this looked like as well as how it looked like capturing subjects, and you know, I think for the most part it got it. Film is more forgiving in its highlights, but I think it's just a little bit too blown out. Maybe I should have had her stand in the sun. It's a very candid, I wasn't thinking this shot through kind of moment, but you know. Okay, I think this was about taking a shot to capture the colors because it was such a bright day at this moment at my mom's house. The blossoms were blooming, so we take a picture, you know? I had like my little grandma Facebook moment right here. You know, I was like, look at a flower. You know, after the year we had last year and everything became so green, I think there was a little bit of us Californians that were just like so excited that things were starting to grow here again. We were just like, life! It's back. I think the lighting's fine. It is midday, so it's just not super exciting, but the color pop is incredible and it shows the quality of the lens, I think. Now here's another shot, one of my mom that I did that auto exposure thing again, just to kind of see. And this one I think, even though the background is so blown out, there's enough detail back there that I kind of like it. I don't know why. Like, this is incorrect. The headroom is insane, but I like it. Am I wrong? Probably, but it's my picture. I make the decisions. This is a picture of my sister's dog, Ellie. I don't know, just good framing. She's just waiting for the ball to be thrown, but I think it works really well. It is midday again, so you know, not the most interesting of lighting. Maybe I should have done one more stop. But I feel like the shot is actually pretty airy and nice, you know? There's not enough separation for me between her, the plants in front of her, and the grass behind her, but, you know, first time with the camera, still playing around with it. I didn't think we needed to go through the whole roll, but you know, I wanted to look at a few shots. That way we can see like where things started and where they ended up only a few weeks later. But like I promised, just for fun, I thought it'd be cool to also look through my favorite shots this year. Narrowed it down to 5, like I said, but maybe I'm incorrect because I did that, but these are the first ones that came to mind. And what's fun about these shots, or I feel like most of them, maybe not most, but a lot of them are not in videos, and they weren't part of shoots for videos, so they're just like me having fun and taking pictures for the hell of it. There are so many times I went out to shoot with Alex, and we didn't have a plan, we didn't make a video, we just were shooting. There was like a good 6 months where we were shooting every week, you know, because when you're out with people, sometimes the instinct to like keep firing is a little bit more intense than when you're on your own. I feel like I'm a lot more of a methodical photographer if I'm alone and I'm really like taking my time with shots. Like that first test roll took me 3 days. When I'm out with Alex, I can blow through 3 rolls in like 2 hours. I don't know what's wrong with me. So this first shot was my first time shooting red scale. You know, because lomography has that variable ISO. I think I shot this at 200. Maybe I shot it at 100. Either way, it's a little underexposed for me, but we got very lucky going up close to Mount Baldy. There was just this huge cloud that was coming through, and the further up we went, the denser it got. But the way the dead tree lined up in the background, the fog encompassing all of the tree line behind it. I don't know, I have a lot of shots from this roll that I really love, but this one really just kind of captures the mood, and because of that red scale, it's got that like everything's on fire kind of vibe, which is terrifying, but I don't know. It's a really interesting image for me. Okay, now this is one of my favorites that I shot all year. I know it's just a f***ing dead tree, but it was my first time shooting Delta 400. I believe I had a red filter on the Nikon F2 as well. And I think if I had just taken this on a normal like HP5 no filter, this photo wouldn't have been as interesting to me as it turned out, because the filter really helped make the pulled away bark pop in this extra brightness and contrast that wouldn't have really been there. It's hard to tell from a video perspective, but the fine grain on this image is something I've never captured on black and white. It's scrumdiddlyumptious for me. And the little fall off of the foliage right on the bottom edges of the image really helped put a depth to it that, for a shot that was captured at a very high f-stop, is still able to put some separation that I like. Okay, now this one was in a video. Not a lot of you saw the Ren Fair video, and that's fair, you know, because that was just a point and shoot video, but this is definitely one of my favorite shots from the whole year. I believe this was the Minolta, and I think this is Ultramax. At this point, we're probably a little buzzed when I took this picture, which is what makes it so much more surprising to me just in general, because I love the way all of the color is captured here. Like for a second, if you just saw this image out of context, maybe you don't think it's even like part of a reenactment. Like I know that cameras did not exist in the kingdom comes of like Great Britain and all that, but there's something about, because everyone's in costume, everyone feels like they're just locked into this moment. The roses on the headpiece of this girl that's coming up to, probably she's just coming up to take a picture with the queen, you know, just like a little candid moment. And I just happened to capture this happening right before it becomes candid and posy. This just feels like a painting to me. Like I know it's not, and I know it's just silly, but I love it for whatever reason. Okay, now this one's not from a video, and half of this roll was a nightmare. I don't know why I did this, but I brought the Canonet to a punk show with the old flash. You know, I could have brought so many different cameras. I could have brought digital, but for whatever reason, I was like, let's bring the hardest rangefinder to try and pull focus in a dark punk bar when everyone's moving around and pushing you over. I was so close to breaking that camera in this show, and I will never bring a camera like that to a punk show like that ever again. But dude, this shot, this is Delta 3200, I believe, and I rated it for 1000 ISO because there was absolutely no light in there. Like, yeah, I'm using a flash, but as you can tell from the shot, it is just flash. That is all that I'm using to light up this moment. But the movement here is great. I have a few shots from this night that I'm actually really proud of. I used to play music. I used to capture bands all the time, like way back in the 2010s, but this took me back to that feeling. And the fact that I was able to do it on film so seamlessly is surprising to me. So it's less that this is the best shot I've ever taken, and more it took me back there and it proved that I could do something even if it's really hard. I don't know how you guys feel about this shot, but this is maybe my favorite shot I took all year. Again, not something from a video, but I believe this was my first time shooting Cinestill 800T. And it's a little grainy, you know? I didn't nail the exposure on this, but my framing on this was kind of incredible to me. Like, it's just so... The train was coming, and I was thinking something more along the lines of something typical of running up to the train tracks, getting that shot as it moves through the frame, you know? But we weren't gonna make it. Alex and I, we were too slow, you know? So I picked a shot, and for whatever reason, I liked the lighting of this little tunnel going under the train tracks, and there's a lot of different things going on here. There's so much depth, and yet most of it is in focus, and in hindsight, I'm really happy that it's not complete dead of night. We still have a little bit of blue hour going on, even though there's cloud coverage. It's just moody. I don't know. The movement of the train in the background, but with the stillness of everything, it's kind of creepy almost, you know? Your eye is drawn to the darkness first at the bottom of the bridge, and then your eyes kind of dance around the rest of the image, and there's so many little pockets of light that are kind of fun to look at. I like it a lot. I'm gonna stop tooting my own horn now, though. I guess all I'm getting at when I look at these images is to say it really doesn't matter what you use, especially when you're starting out. I'm a fairly seasoned visual artist, and looking back at that first roll is almost juvenile and silly, but more importantly, it's consistent and adventurous. I bet right now you could go outside and take very similar photos to that roll, but you won't be able to capture exactly how I felt in that moment. And that's what's important to this whole thing. And when I got the negatives back that first time, the feeling it gave me was so much of an accomplishment that I didn't know I was searching for. It might sound dumb, but it really hit. And that's what got me to go back and revisit those images I had taken of my mom and us cutting her hair before her chemo treatment. You know, it gave me an appreciation that I didn't fully have for those photos yet, that I now had. And knowing that I really wasn't even trying to do anything moving with those photos, it was more something small and intimate for us, made them that much more special. I saw their power and beauty beyond themselves. I think it's important sometimes to always value your victories, even if they're not portfolio-worthy images. This hobby has taken me to so many different photo walks, met so many great people. Harmon event is something I'll look back on as one of my favorite things of 2023, and I could have never predicted that for myself a year before that. I'd like to thank anyone over this last year that has supported me in this expensive hobby and helped me grow as an artist. From the amazing local labs like Bill's Camera and Tuttle Cameras, to my friends and family that put up with me talking about film way too much all the time at dinner. And before we go, I'd like to do a really soft launch of a print shop, because more than a few of you have actually asked for prints to be available over the last year. Why do you want one of my photos hanging above your toilet? I don't know, but you do you, homie. You can find my darkroom link in the description that is currently showcasing a few curated prints, some of which you may have seen in this video. I'm not great, but I'd like to be. And if you're always out there capturing, I don't see why you can't be too. Stay dry, stay out of the flood, and I don't know, put on a spooky movie, light some candles. It's gonna get wet.